All right, listeners, good afternoon. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I'm your host, Danielle Richardson. And today I'm actually speaking with Jessica Daley. Um, for those of you who don't know her, she actually started her career out in the Over the Rainbow competition. And actually, a few weeks ago, I released Stephanie Fearon's interview. And Jessica was also one of the contestants that was in that show. Um, and Jessica's gone on from there to do the West End. She's been all around the world performing different roles. She's been in Les Miserables, she's been in Evita, Mamma Mia as well, a host of others. And she's kind of on a break right now. So I'm so glad to get to kind of talk with her and grab this time with her. Um, Jessica, before I start, I want to ask you, do you you know, when you were in Over the Rainbow, because I mean, me as a viewer, I felt stressed for all you guys. I don't think I could have done it because it was so much stress, and then you all like each other, and so you want to be, rooting for each other, but at the same time, you want to win. Um, like for you, when you didn't win, when you got out of the competition, did you feel like you wouldn't end up being able to pursue acting and music like you wanted to? Like, did that feel like the end for you, or you were pretty confident that this was kind of the door to getting into the next step?
I fortunately already knew that I had a place at stage school during that time. So during Over the Rainbow, actually before Over the Rainbow, before my audition, I'd got my place at Arts Ed in London, which is one of the top musical theatre colleges. But I was awaiting news of getting a scholarship to go. So I thought, oh, I'll audition for Over the Rainbow. Nothing will come of it, but whatever experience while I was waiting to kind of find out about my funding. Um, and then obviously audition for Over the Rainbow and it kind of snowballed and I just kept getting through the rounds and I kept getting called back and I was like, oh my God, like this was not meant to happen. I was just meant to kill a bit of time before finding out whether I could go to Arts Ed or not. And when we were rehearsing for the top 20 shows, I got a text message from my mum to say, you had a letter through to say that you've got your scholarship. So for
Uh,
me, yeah, for me, like from that point onwards, any day that I got to spend in that competition was a bonus because I always knew that I was regardless going to go and train and do my degree in musical theatre, which was always my dream growing up. Like I never wanted to do anything else other than like there was a brief moment when I thought, oh, I could be a vet, and I'm like, I don't like blood. I couldn't be a vet. Like that's the only other time that I thought, oh, could I do something No, I'm doing musicals. So up until that point in the competition, I was kind of like, oh, how's this gonna play out? But then I got my scholarship and then I could really enjoy the ride for what it was. And I think because of that, when I got voted out, I don't know if you can tell from like the performance when I did get voted out and I sang Over the Rainbow on the Moon, I'm like buzzing. I'm like, whoa, see you later, guys. Like I kind of wavered in the beginning getting on the moon because obviously it is sad to say goodbye to your friends who
yeah.
you've made. And those guys were like my sisters that I never had. So we'd formed quite a strong bond. Um, but yeah, to get on the moon, I was kind of like, see you. I'm going to do my training anyway, so I'll probably see you out in the industry in 3 years. So I think I in that way I had quite a unique experience with it all because I've been able to moving forward in my career, I've been able to draw upon that experience,
Yeah.
which not a lot of people have had the opportunity to go through. It was quite a unique experience that only so many of us got to go through. Um, but also I can draw an experience from my training as well. So the kind of both of them together have given me this really valuable foundation to build from, I think.
Mm,
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate and I mean, I have worked really hard, so I won't say it's all down
yeah.
to luck, but I have been incredibly lucky as well. Just to be in the right place at the right time and the right opportunities coming up at the right time and everything kind of aligning as it should. Yeah.
What do you think has been the hardest rejection for you? Because I know you mentioned with Over the Rainbows, kind of like you had a backup plan. Um, what in your career has been the hardest? Because I know talking with other musical artists, they say you get so many more rejections than you get yeses. And so you kind of
Mhm.
just have to get used to that and not take it personally.
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few parts that I've been in for that I've been like, oh my gosh, dream role, and you get right down to the end, and it breaks your heart. It does when you get down to the end and you don't, it's like it's not going any further. You start to like imagine your life as that part and like spend the paycheck that that you're never gonna get. Um, and I like to always remain optimistic and best case scenario, because I think there's no point in being negative about it and thinking, oh, what about if I don't get it? So I try my best to stay on the optimistic side so that when I don't get it, I'm like, oh, it is a shame. Um, but with every rejection, something else has come along that has completely surprised me and has slotted right in, and I've gained so much from accepting that sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes you can imagine your life and imagine the roles that you should be playing or that you really want to play or you grew up dreaming about playing, but it doesn't always work out the way that you that you try and plan. Like you can never plan for this industry. Like there is always stuff that crops up that completely surprises you. So I think like well, as the years have gone by, I've just kind of surrendered to that and accepted that that is what happens sometimes. You can, yeah, I for all of the parts that I didn't get, I've been given amazing opportunities that I never even dreamt of. Like Evita slipped the net for me growing up. I never listened to it. I only knew like a couple of the songs. I didn't realize how big of a role it was for a
Yeah.
woman in musical theatre. I didn't realize that it happened to sit perfectly in my voice. And that it was just such a incredible vehicle acting wise. It completely slipped the net to me. So like that popped a lot, that audition popped along, and I think I'd been rejected for a few things before that, and I'd actually gone. It's funny because I always talk to my granddad, and now my nan who have passed over to the other side, for guidance. Like I feel like they're my spirit guides. So when I'm in a bit of a hole and in a bit of a rut, I go to the cemetery and I have a little word with them and I say, send me a sign that something better's on the way, please. Like just have a bit of faith in something. And I'd gone to see my granddad in the cemetery when I'd felt a bit low after a few rejections. And
Hmm.
I said, Granddad, like, this is driving me up the wall. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need you to send me a sign. And then when I was walking home from the cemetery, I got the email through to audition for Evita. And I knew, like, I just had
Wow.
this feeling. I was like, yeah, yeah, let's go home and learn this. And I sang the stuff and I went, this is going in so easy. Everything is just happening so organically. And then I went into the room and I did like 2 rounds of auditions and got the job. So like I never could have imagined that would happen ever growing up. Like I never ever even thought that I would want to play that role. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Do you have a role you really want to play that you haven't yet?
But I mean, there's lots that I'd love to play when I'm a bit older. And it's obviously changed as I've gotten a bit older. I'm like now 30s, so like the
Yeah.
roles that I always dreamed of playing when I was younger, some I managed to do like Fontaine and Les Mis. I covered that part in Les Mis on the tour, and I got on and got to play that role, and that was a part that I played at youth theatre. That was like, oh my God, that's like full circle moment.
It's a
Um,
powerful role too. Yeah.
yeah, beautiful role. I mean, and stuff like I never thought I'd get to go on and play the Wicked Witch of the West, like on the full circle moment front. Like I didn't get Dorothy all those years ago, and then I ended up doing the Wizard of Oz at the Palladium last year, and I ended up covering the Wicked Witch, and I went on for the Wicked Witch, and it was kind of like I was never meant to be Dorothy. I was always meant to be in my villain era. Um, and I got to play that part, and like I videoed it and I put it on TikTok because I thought it was really funny, and people were like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" So I like so it just stuff knocks you off sometimes. But parts at the minute, I mean, the number one at the minute would be Elphaba in Wicked. Like I think that's the dream,
Yeah.
just to really challenge yourself, like Evita, like knowing that I could do Evita. I'm like, oh yeah, Elphaba's another one up there that I'm like, what challenge wise, I'd love to get my teeth into. But then there's like roles. that I really want to do when I'm older. Like I'd love to do Donna in Mamma Mia. I'd love to do like
Hmm.
Gypsy. I'd love to do a Sundance show, like Follies or something like that, and play like young Sally or not young Sally, Sally or Phyllis or you know those older parts that I'm yet to grow into. So that's really exciting to look forward to as well. But I don't want to wish my life away at the same time. So I'm kind of like, ew, what do I want to do at the moment? I don't know. I'm at a bit of a crossroads.
What is like, is there something outside of your career, like a personal goal you really want to achieve?
I mean, stability in this crazy life that we lead is always
Yeah.
like the one thing that I'd love to do. So like obviously on a personal note, I mean, I started trying to save for a house when I was doing a Vita and then the pandemic hit. And I thought at the time I
Mm,
was like, I only need a few more like jobs to get me like good and happy and like edging towards maybe being able to look for somewhere of my own. And then the pandemic happened and cost of living crisis and everything, and it's just been put on the back burner. So that's always a personal dream to have my own place. I think it's hard for any self-employed person to get to buy property at the moment anyway, but
yeah.
hopefully over the next few years be able to do that. But then also on a creative level, like I've been writing. I really want to write something for myself. I want to write shows. I'd love to direct. I'd love to go into that realm. And recently I've been thinking about like my greater purpose outside of the arts and outside of everything. And I just think I love to be of service to people. And I'm kind of thinking ahead into the future and thinking, work aside, how else can I be of service to my community? And I'm
Yeah.
quite passionate about my hometown where I'm from, which I'm here back at my mum's house at the moment. Um, I'm really passionate about giving children the opportunity to experience the arts and go and see theatre
Hmm.
and pursue a career in the arts if they want to, um, without having to think about anything financial. Like, because it's such a at the moment it's a really hard industry to be working class in. Um,
Hmm.
and I think with the cost of living and everything like that and the way that the, the arts and stuff have gone within politics and stuff like, which is a bit to the side, but it's more exclusive now. Like theatre prices, um, uh, crazy at the moment. It's really expensive to go to the theatre. It's expensive to
Hmm.
do anything. It's expensive to go down to London and see stuff from the north. So, ideally, in the future, I'd love to be able to like help create some kind of organization that can help kids access theatre and so theatre can be more accessible to people in my area. Um, I
Hmm.
think, and I think that stems actually a lot from the support that I got when I was on Over the Rainbow. I've never felt support like it as a young adult, just about to embark on my career and to go off and train and move away for the first time. The level of support that I felt from my local community, I will never ever forget it. And that's why I love coming home and I love teaching here and I love reconnecting with people here because they're just so supportive and have always championed me wherever I might be. And they're always so happy to welcome me back as well. So
Hmm.
yeah.
You were mentioning um earlier, you said you started thinking about your wider purpose. What kind of prompted that? Is it because you've been having more time lately where you've not been like go, 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 or what's prompted the thought?
Oh, well, this was during being on the go. Like
Hmm.
I think on a personal level, I lost my nan last year. Um, and I don't
Wasn't
mind.
she in Over the Rainbow?
Yeah, she
I
popped
saw,
up.
yeah.
She was like the center of our universe.
Hmm.
And we lost her last year, last January. And I think from that moment, I mean, like anyone in grief, it hits you like a bus, and you just kind of do what you can to get through. And I think I've I admit that mentally I've struggled to reconnect with myself during that time because there's been such a big gap in my life that I've been feeling. the loss of. Like there's such a huge void of where I used to place love. I'm like, where do I put that love now? Um, and I
Yeah.
think I used work as a distraction, like anyone, like anyone would. Like I took jobs that wouldn't necessarily be the jobs that I would take after trying to work my way up and play leads. Like I stepped back into an ensemble cover role, and then took an UK tour, which was quite long, um, which I just wanted to keep working to get some sense of stability so that I could grieve, but was also distracting myself from the grief. And I've only realized recently just how burnt out I've been from doing that. And
Hmm.
I've just been trying to slowly come back to myself and trying to reconnect with myself and what makes me me and what I'm passionate about and what I care about moving forward, because when you first enter into this industry, you have to audition and work your way up. That's how I was brought up to work, was to you have to start at the bottom and you have to earn your place and you have to work your way up. So you start with the ensemble roles, you work up to covering parts and understudying parts, and then you take a leap of faith and say no to stuff in order to be seen for leading roles if that's what you want to do.
Hmm.
And that's the path that I've taken. Um, and workers, that whole climb has been my life for so long. And then when you finally achieve that and you start playing the roles, it's like, okay, well, what now? Because I've achieved great things. I've played some amazing roles. I think Evita was just like the top for me. I was like, I've achieved what could possibly be the highlight of anyone's career. I've achieved it in role and in show. Now where do I go now? So I think it's about you then start to think of other areas in your life now that you're not giving so much to your work, because you're saying no to more things that don't align with you as you grow up, because you can, because you earn your place. um so I've started saying no to going in for things that I don't want to do, or I don't think I'm right for, or that don't align with where I'm at right now. But that means that there's less opportunities to audition. So
Hmm.
in the spare time, how do you fill that spare time? Do you just sit by the phone and wait, or do you actually get up and say, right, what can I achieve? What else makes me tick? What else makes me feel fulfilled? Um, so I think that's when I started to I had a little bit of time towards the end of my last job to be like, okay, where do I want to go from here? And what else do I love doing, and what makes me happy moving forward? And I think that was a big thing I thought a lot of what I do when I'm out of work in the theatre world is like teaching and stuff like that. And that's where I get so much I get my kicks, because I love paying it forward and seeing people grow and change, and just seeing how theatre can just completely bring people out of their shell and help people express themselves. And
Yeah.
think in that way, like I was like, yeah, I love to be of service. I think that's part of my makeup, my genetic makeup. And spoke to my mum about it. My mum's the same. My nana was the same. I yeah, it's but yeah, I do have a good old think. I am a bit of an overthinker at times. So I do tend to go deep, but yeah, I get a lot from it. So why wouldn't I?
What did you, how, because it's, you're so blessed to have a close relationship with your grandmother, because my grandmother lived far away. We really weren't able to connect super deeply. So I always, when I listen to people talk about their grandmothers, I'm like, it's so wonderful when I hear someone say, like, they were my best friend. And, that generation gap wasn't there for them. Um, like for you, how did you connect with your Nan? Like, what did you love about her?
She was just a force of nature. Didn't she? To anyone else, it's just your usual nan behavior. But to me, she was just such a pillar of strength, and she just faced so much adversity with her health, especially. But she also lost my granddad when she was young. She was like in her 50s.
Oh, wow.
And he died quite young. And the way that she picked up her life and carried on and was always there to support anybody in the family if they needed it. Um, and was at every show of mine. She was obsessed. She was just always there. And even like I when I went and did Les Mis abroad, I did it in Manila and I did it in Singapore. She flew out to Singapore to come and see the show. And we
Wow.
went to Australia and she was it was like in her late 70s, early 80s then. Um, and she was just like she would never give up. And it's that strength and that like resilience, I think, that just made her so special.
Hmm.
But her love for her family and her love for supporting people and being there for people. And I always say like the pandemic was so rubbish in so many ways for so many people, and traumatic and has completely changed the course of everything for everyone and work and how people are and mental health and stuff like that. But I got a moment in time, those few years, I got to be at home and spend those few years sitting in the garden with my nan and having a joke with her and taking silly videos of her and just spending quality time with her that I would never have had if not for the pandemic. And I
Hmm.
just always think it was just the universe was like, yeah, have this time and then before it runs out essentially. But yeah, she was just and me. We were all very similar as well. Me, my mum, and my nan are cut from the same cloth. We were just a trilogy of people. Like we were just always together. Um, and yeah, it just when we lost her, it just felt like the center of the universe disappeared, and nobody quite knew how to orbit once she was
Yeah.
gone. And it's been a gradual healing process from that. When someone who impacts your life so hugely and impacts all of our lives in our family, like we've got quite a big family, everyone has felt it so deeply, and it's just testament to how loved she was and how much of a presence she was. So yeah,
What's your favorite memory of her and you?
one of my favorite memories. And I often look at like the video. I mean, I used to torture her a lot. I'd be like filming her on my phone and she'd be like, get off. But one of my favorite funny memories is my mum used to be in a choir for a bit, a local choir. And when I was like, all right, you're gonna give me a lift, we're gonna go and watch your mum in this choir. And we'd sit we were sat in the audience just like drinking mulled wine and watching my mum, but she she got a mulled wine and she loved to drink. She got a bottle of brandy out of a bag and just poured it in this mulled wine, and we just sat and we were laughing really, really meanly, laughing at the whole circumstance of just being in this church, watching this choir, watching my mum singing in this choir, but just having a hoot. Um, and then another memory, like all of my friends loved her and adored her, and she'd she came to one of my youth theatre parties when I was 16. I had an after party for one of our youth theatre shows. Um, and one of my friends brought a bottle of Jägermeister. Do you know Jägermeister? The drink? It's like a
No.
spirit. Oh, it's a spirit. Anyway, he brought this bottle of Jägermeister and people like used to shot it and make Jäger bombs out of it, which is like Jägermeister and Red Bull, which is oh
Oh, that
God.
must be like something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, lethal. But he rocks in with this bottle of Jägermeister and she's like, "What's that then?" And he's like, "It's Jägermeister, do you want some?" She's like, "Go on then." And by the end, he'd passed out under the table. She was still going strong. She'd like outdrank him. And then she tried to walk home on her own. And my dad was like, get in the car, get in the car. No, I'll walk home on my own. She's like falling over. But she outdrank my friends at this party, and everybody always talked about it and always remembered it. She was just such an icon. She was hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Is how did you say that? Jägermeister?
Jägermeister.
What,
Jaeger.
how do you compare it to something? Is it like whiskey or like,
It's like, what is it? It's like do you like the fireball kind of spirit? Do you know, like, oh, I don't know. It's
does it
like,
mean it burns when you drink it kind of thing?
Yeah, it kind of does. It's a bit kind of I don't know how to explain it. It tastes a little bit medicinal. It's like one of those shots,
Okay.
as opposed to like tequila and stuff like that, which is like spirit.
What's your favorite?
What's my favorite?
Yeah, because
I
I kind of go more for if I do a more specialty type of thing. I do like tequila, honestly. I
tequila.
like the taste.
I always say tequila's an upper. Like it lifts mood. Like so, it's got like mood lifting properties. So if I do, I'm like tequila's an upper. Woo! Um, but yeah, I mean it can be gross, but I do like a margarita. I do like that. Shot in tequila is another story.
I've only had like one margarita in my life. I've
What?
not like I personally love wines. I don't know if it's an Italian thing, but I love wines.
I do
And
like wine.
so my husband's more of like a beer drinker. He likes beer, which I ugh, haven't
Oh,
really found one that I liked.
I quite like everything if I'm honest.
You
I
like
don't like
everything?
I don't drink as much as I used to. I used to be quite the socialite, but I do white wine. I like a red wine. And only in recent years though. I've become more civilized in recent years. I go for the red wine. But I do like whiskey. I think from visiting America and just
Man,
going
okay.
whiskey ginger, let's go. Like so easy to have and yeah, I do like a whiskey.
What do you think of the difference between America? Because I have visited England and I loved my time there.
Hmm.
I love your food, which was kind of funny because a lot of friends of mine who've been to England are like, it's so bland. I don't know why you like it, but I really liked it. Um, I don't know, for you, like when you came to America, was there anything you thought was really different, or did it just kind of feel the same to you?
I mean, like the portion sizes are huge in America,
They are
and
big.
I could not, I could not, especially at the moment. I don't eat as much. Again, I don't eat as much as I used to. As I've gotten older, I'm like, ooh, I eat less and I drink less. It
Why?
sounds
Is
really
it just
terrible.
like a decision you've had, or you're just not hungry?
I don't know. I think I've become more health conscious over the
Right.
last
Okay.
year or so. Well, I think the grief has knocked it out of me a little bit as well. I've struggled a lot with like my anxiety over the last year because of the grief and because of different things. But I think yeah, I think just I've become more health conscious as well. I think over the lockdown we really let ourselves go. I definitely did let myself go. Um, and especially after like just before the pandemic, I was in China, and it's really difficult. I find the food in China quite difficult. It's not really my go-to choice of food. So I came home a little bit heavier than usual from just like eating whatever I could
Yeah.
find that I liked. Um, and then I got into lockdown and I was like, right, well, I'm just gonna learn how to cook. I'm gonna just cook all of these comfort dishes and bake cakes every day and I'm gonna put like tequila and like Calippo lollies in a NutriBullet and make a frozen margarita and there we go. And I think from the end of lockdown forward, I looked at pictures of myself. I was like, okay, we need to get back on the fitness wagon. So I'm just a bit more conscious nowadays, I think, with that in mind. But yeah, I think with the drink thing, I go in and out of phases, but when my mental health isn't tip top, I try not to drink as much because obviously it affects
Yeah.
everything. And I think everything in moderation anyway is better. I don't tend to party as much as I used to. I just like to go out for a few drinks and then I'll be like, okay, I want to go home to bed now. Do my skincare and go to bed.
You mentioned your anxiety with, is it health anxiety? Like just wanting to make sure that, because I mean, that's something I have actually really,
Hmm.
really hard for me is when I've had some very close friends struggle with their health. Like if something just hit them all of a sudden, like they were totally fine, and then
Yeah.
something hit them, and then they are not doing well at
Yeah.
all. And that can trigger it for me, where it's like I am so afraid of dying or like something terrible happening to me, that it can just consume. And that's what I'm thinking about and worrying about, and kind of even sometimes directing my day or my thoughts based on that. Um,
Yeah.
Like for you, is that kind of where the anxiety stemmed because of the grief, or is it just the feelings of sadness from grief that are hard and kind of disarming at times?
I think a bit of everything, like obviously, do you know what? The pandemic didn't help either. I think that all made us very, very conscious of a lot of things. I think that
It
gave me a
did,
little
yeah.
bit of health anxiety, especially because my nan was still alive during the pandemic, and it was like, right, okay, we really need to be careful because she's a
Yeah.
vulnerable person. She had like chest issues anyway, so I was like, we need to not put her at risk. She did get COVID and she beat COVID, which again is another testament to her resilience and her strength because she was like, I'm not gonna let this take me down. But I think that obviously brought things to light. And yeah, being there, not to get really morbid or whatever, but I was there when she passed away. And to witness that whole process was
Hmm.
obviously very traumatic and does obviously leave you thinking about your own mortality without getting too like deep and into it. But
Sure.
it does bring put things into perspective, I think, and it does make you think about death. And I actually only recently I went to like a random sound bath on a on a full moon in London a few months ago. Um and it came up in my sound bath of like death and if I died today, would I feel like I've achieved what I've wanted to achieve and have I lived how I've wanted to live? And that was quite helpful because I've always been scared of death. I've always been scared of getting ill. And I did have a bit of health anxiety when I came back from Avita,
Mm.
um, because of the role that I was playing and how she died quite young and putting your body through that every single night.
Oh, yeah.
Like your body doesn't know the difference between you acting and you kind of
Yeah.
thinking that you're actually going through it. So I think I came home from China from doing a Vita and I was very conscious of it and actually my alternate who was the loveliest girl in the world in the last week got diagnosed with breast cancer when we were in China.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
to go through that every night and to put your body through that every night. But then my friend got diagnosed with cancer in that same week. Especially after playing that part as well, like we shared the role, like she did 2 shows a week.
That's really hard.
That what that does to your brain, I didn't quite compute until I got home and went, oh my
Mm.
God, like it's just messed with my head a little bit. It's not like I was like, I'm gonna get cancer, I'm gonna get cancer, but it just makes you think about your own health and makes you very, very
Yeah.
conscious. So I do go in and out of having a bit of health anxiety. I think as you get older as well, you kind of like have to look after yourself a bit more and you're aware, oh, I'm not the spring chicken that I once was. Because I've always thought that I'm like invincible. And
Yeah.
I've bounced back so quickly before and touch wood, I've never broken a bone and stuff like that. And then as you get older, you're like, ooh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, it's been hurting for 3 weeks now. Oh, it's not getting any better. I'm gonna have to go get physio. Like you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
I'm getting on a bit. So yeah, I think it is, especially with what we do as well, because what we do is so physical. You become more conscious as you get older. So, but the anxiety part is from a lot of different things. I think just being in grief in general and feeling that lack and being in that lack mindset because there's a huge part of your life missing.
Yeah.
Um, Completely normal. But it just sends you into a bit of a darker space. And I've not been used to being in that darker space.
Yeah.
So I think there's no real kind of black and white manual to navigate through grief. Like you just have to kind of ride the wave and do it how you do it and try and process it and just try and let it out. And but even when you are trying to let it out, you could be suppressing it. It's just really difficult. And anxiety was just a big with regards to what the work I was doing and I was on tour and I was constantly moving as well.
Yeah.
I think just the mix of everything was just a bit chaotic, I think.
Well, I know you mentioned the church with your mom and the choir. Has spirituality been anything that's been a comfort to you, or for you, is it more you haven't found that helpful?
I mean, my mom, we're not like we're not religious, my family. We
Okay.
are I grew up as a Catholic, so I think that maybe is instilled in me, like the service thing is instilled in me via the Catholic Church. I went to a Catholic school, but I wouldn't class myself as a practicing Catholic. But spirituality has certainly helped me through some darker times, because it's allowed me to kind of surrender to a higher power in order to just kind of like let things go and just let things be how they're meant to be and unfold how they're meant to unfold. So I did kind of venture into a bit more spirituality about 6 years ago. Yeah, 6 years ago, when I was going through another hard time after a job that was quite difficult at the time.
Hmm.
I came off and I went like, how can I deal with this? How can I heal from this? And I did the therapy and I did everything else, but it's I think having, even if you don't believe in God as such, which I don't know if I do, but I believe in it as something bigger out there, and I thought I'm just going to throw it up to the universe and let go. And I think that's helped me on so many occasions because I'm like, I can't control everything. Not everything is within my control. I can only
Yeah.
deal with what's in my circle of control. So mentally to be able to be like, I can't control that. Just gotta let that go. Or
Yeah.
like in those times of needing a bit of guidance and help and not knowing where to turn and not being able to get it in the 3D, I think having the thought of my spirit guides being my nana and granddad now has really helped me through some dark times. Like I do go to the cemetery and I sit and have a chat with them, and I find myself getting, I said this to my mum the other day, I don't know if it is real or not, but in those moments I get moments of clarity come through, and I get little messages come through to my brain which I'd not been thinking about, um and didn't have the answers for. And then I'll
Yeah.
go away from the cemetery and I'll have a little bit more of an answer to something that I've been frustrated about or sad about. Um and it's just weird how that happens because I don't necessarily know how else to explain it other than they're there and they're helping me from above. Like,
Yeah.
and to have that belief in that is, and to have faith in something, I think sometimes is so important because it just allows you to let go of control and let things unfold
We'll have some
as they're
hope
meant to.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
You've been mentioning the parts even can be so hard, and then when you're
Mm.
done with it, you need a break. Do you like on the road, do you have someone that like some like a therapist or some sort of coach that helps when a role is really dark or really hard and you're just doing it all the time?
I think some jobs do now. It's never been that much of a thing in the industry.
Hmm.
But I think nowadays, because mental health has taken more of a kind of center stage a bit more in previous years, and people have been more open about it and talking about it, it is more of a thing now. If the subject matter is dark, then the depending on the company and the production company, they will provide support and help. But one of my friends actually in 20, I think it was 2018, started a charity called Applause for Thought, which is a charity based around mental health, support for mental health within
Wow.
the arts. And she's started providing people with like mental health first aid courses that people can book onto. Like she facilitates that for them. So as part of that, like I trained as a mental health first aider in lockdown, which is quite cool, which was never a thing when I was just graduated.
Hmm.
And more people are training in that, so more and more people can support people if needed, especially on tour because you're
Wow.
constantly changing venues every week and you're moving around, and it's so there's like such a massive sense of instability that like it can get quite hard regardless of the role that you're playing. It can get hard mentally. So
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say there's always a level of support there, but I think people are more open about talking about how it's affecting them now, and are willing to have the conversation and are willing to reach out to get help now. Whereas I think a lot of people in the past maybe didn't do that because they felt they couldn't do that. I think it's
Yeah.
more common now for people to take a mental health day if they need it. which I have definitely done over the last year,
Yeah.
um, with what I've been dealing with mentally. Um, and you feel more comfortable to do that nowadays, whereas 10 years ago I maybe wouldn't have. Um, which is cool. It's cool to kind of feel that progression in that way. But only recently I was speaking to a therapist and she was like, I was explaining to her my situation, what was going on in my head, and like how I was feeling and whatnot. And she was, what part are you playing at the moment? And at the time, I was playing the role of like a gambling addict, and
Oh,
it was quite a light-hearted show. The character was quite close to who I am. Like it's all based on it was developed and improvised around what we brought to the character. So the character was just a bit of a heightened version of myself, really, with the added vice of a gambling addiction. And I told
yeah,
her that she
good
was
thing you
like,
clarified that.
yeah, yeah, I don't have a gambling addiction. I'm just gonna disclaimer. Fortunately. Um, but she said that says a lot. She said you need to, even if you think it's not affecting you massively, you're still putting yourself through that mentally and your body through
Yeah.
that mentally. And
Hmm.
your brain sometimes and your body won't realize what's truth and what's not truth. So you have to be able to have the ability to tap out of that as much as tapping into it. Um, which I think is such an interesting conversation with regards to education in the training sense of musical theatre because and acting, of being able to use tools to access character and access those emotions and access what you
Hmm.
need in order to tell the story you've been asked to tell, but also at the end of it all to be able to disconnect from that
Yeah.
effectively so that it doesn't affect your mental health. So yeah, that's been really kind of
Hmm.
present for me in the last year. I've really thought about that a lot in the last year, and moving forward, I will think about it a lot more than I initially have done.
Was Evita the hardest one for you?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It was kind of like it was again just this huge vehicle, and it got to the point where obviously her story is she works her way up to the top, she reaches peak level of fame, and she's always had people trying to cut her down, cut her down, cut her down, and then she gets ill and she declines. And I remember the scene that she starts really declining. You get on the train at that scene and you're on it till the very end. And I remember every night just getting myself into a pretty dark spot and just riding the train till the end. And it would be different every night. And some nights I wouldn't remember what I did and just kind of like
Hmm.
really surrendered.
Yeah.
And I've not felt like that way in a job or on a playing a role before. Like I felt like I was back at drama school where you really get into like the nitty gritty in the classroom and you do all of these weird like methods and you learn all the different ways to get into a character. Like it felt like that again, but I allowed myself to go into such a dark space and just got on the train and went. And then that mixed with the culture shock of China and being away from home and being so far away from home and feeling like you can't get out. You have to kind of ride the wave and keep going, keep going, keep going till the end date. That mixed in with that was quite the cocktail. So I got home and I just felt like an absolute empty vessel. And I actually said to my agent at the time, I need a little bit of time out. I need a little bit of time out. And then within
Hmm.
weeks, the pandemic hit, and I was like, I didn't
Oh
ask
my
for a
goodness.
pandemic.
Wow.
I
Yeah,
didn't
it's a
ask for a
lot.
pandemic. I just
Yeah.
wanted a few weeks off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you probably are a little more keen on denying a role based on what you'd have to do for it, like what it mentally
Yeah.
might do.
I think I've definitely turned down going in for stuff. I assess where my brain's at now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I finished the last two that I did. I finished that, and when I was still in that, I got an audition through to go in for something in China again, which would have been at 4 or 5 months again. But the role size it was an iconic role, and it's a dream role of mine. And if it was in this country, I'd have been like, get me in for it, like really good. But the stage time was like 15 minutes long. And if you were
Yeah.
here, it's kind of worth it because you can go, oh yeah, I'm playing this amazing part. I get to sing this amazing song and it's iconic and everyone knows the part and then I get to go home at the end of it all and just have a lovely time. But when you're away for that long and you're isolated from the rest of the cast and you've only got 15 minutes on stage, it was that kind of part which was quite isolated.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought one of the first things that came into my head was, I don't think I can mentally do that right now. Like, I don't think that I could go do my 15 minutes on stage, feel like so disconnected from the rest of the cast that are constantly on stage for the full thing, and then be away from home at the same time. Like, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
what would I do with my time or my, and in that moment, I think there might be a time in life further along that I'd be fine again to do that. But in that moment, I was like, I can't, I can't do that. I couldn't think of anything worse than doing that right now because of where my brain's at.
Yeah.
Because even with being on stage permanently in a Vita, it was hard. So if I'm not on stage to distract me, it's going to be triply as hard. So yeah,
Wow.
I did make that decision this year based on where my head was at and thought I need to put my mental health first. So that was interesting. That was a really interesting decision to make.
Wow. Yeah, this is really eye-opening for me because I didn't even think about, even for musical theater actors, how much of a toll it can mentally take on you.
Mm.
And wanting to give your all because you want the performance to stand out, you want people to connect. But at the
Yeah.
same time, having to have that boundary for yourself of like, well, this isn't me, really. That's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people do, as an art form, people tend to kind of disregard that a little bit with musical theatre because on paper it's musical theatre. Woo, we
Mm-hmm.
sing songs, we dance, and but it's the most physical out of every kind of art form because you're singing, you're dancing, and you're embodying a character and you're having to utilize your brain in that way as well, whilst giving literally everything. Like you're an athlete. We're athletes. People in musical theatre are athletes. It's the best way to describe it. You have to train to be able to sustain that mentally, physically. You have to get the stamina. You sing the show in so that it sits in a particular muscle memory, so it makes life
Mm.
easier. It's like it's really hard, and
Yeah.
people are so quick to go, "Oh, it's musicals, like, woo, anyone can do it." I'm like, no, 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 not everyone can do it.
Hmm.
It's you have to be made of strong stuff, I think, to be able to sustain a long career in it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, Jessica, I want to be respectful of your time too. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
If you could pick any song, one that you've sung, one that you've heard, whatever genre, that you think is you, like really just personifies who you are as a person, what song would that be?
Oh, what song? There's so many so many songs that music is like massive part of my
Yeah.
identity, like, and I'm so like in love with music as a whole. I love every genre. I feel like every genre represents a different area of my life. um I mean, it is really cheesy to say Over the Rainbow, isn't it? But it's been such a defining song in my life, and The Wizard of Oz has been such a recurring dream in my life, and it keeps popping up, and it won't leave me. It's quite freaky. um but I mean the lyrics of that are also like just spot on, and lyrics that I've lived by my whole life really. Like, I've always been a dreamer, and I've always been like, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? I'm gonna do that. Like, even if you tell me no, I'm gonna go and do that. I'm gonna prove you wrong. I've always been one of those people. I've been like, you say I can't jump that high, watch me. Like, and I think that's a lovely part of that song's message. Is like don't let anything stand in the way of something that what you really want. Like I think it's so powerful in that way, and I think that's why it stood the test of time, if I'm honest. And obviously the melody is beautiful, and I love the classics. I think I'm an old soul. I think if I had a dinner party, I would love to be sat around a table with Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli, Barbra Streisand, Lana Luft, who Judy's daughter, who I worked with, who I sat and
Mm.
listened to stories about her mother and her family, which was fascinating. Like this is what I mean about it keeps recurring in my life, like links to the Wizard of Oz in some way. I across the years, it just keeps coming. So that's why I hope that Wicked might be on the cards in the
Yeah.
future. That's why I'm like, fingers crossed. But yeah, I think Somewhere Over the Rainbow is obviously incredibly special. And also People from Funny Girl is very special to me because I really value connection and life wouldn't be the same without people, the people that
Mm.
support and love me and who I love and aspire to be. And connection is just, connection makes me tick. Like, connection is the one. I'm such an extrovert. I'm an introvert extrovert, I think. At times I like my own space, but I am an extrovert. So people are really important to me. And obviously I love Barbra Streisand. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Jessica, I want to say, like, I have had so much fun. Like, just, I feel like you'd be such a great friend, like, just to meet up and talk to and do fun things with. Like, that's just how you come across. And so I'm so, it's been so great. And also, I've learned a lot. So I've
Oh,
just
thank
really,
you.
thank you so much for the time.
That's the biggest compliment you could ever give me, that you'd want to be my friend. Like, because I love people and I love talking. I can talk for England, I
I
told
know
you.
it just went right
Yeah.
there. Well, thank you so much for this interview.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.